Man vanished while hiking. 7 years later, they find this on top of the mountain. It was early October 2018 when Daniel Whitaker parked his truck at the base of Mount Ashburn and disappeared into the forest. He didn't tell anyone exactly where he was going, only that he needed a few days alone. Locals at the gas station remembered him filling up, grabbing a black coffee, and quietly nodding when someone wished him good luck. He looked tired, like a man who'd carried something heavy for a long time. Daniel wasn't a stranger to the outdoors. At 42, he'd spent much of his life hiking Colorado's peaks. He'd been a firefighter for nearly 20 years before stepping away after his wife Margaret died. That loss changed him. The loud, warm man who used to barbecue for the whole street had grown quiet. Not cold, but hollowed out, like something inside him had dimmed. He left no note, but his sister Laura later said that wasn't surprising. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who explained himself. He just packed a small blue backpack, a pair of walking sticks, a few protein bars, and a solar-powered headlamp. He was last seen heading into a lesser-known trailhead around 9 a.m. The sky was clear, the air crisp. There were no warnings of what would follow. When he didn't return after 3 days, his sister reported him missing. The local sheriff's office launched a search. They brought in dogs, helicopters, and more than a dozen volunteers. The area was rugged, the terrain unpredictable. They found nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no campsite. It was as if the mountain had swallowed him. By the 5th day, the weather turned. Thick fog rolled in, and then came the snow, early, heavy, and fast. The search was called off after 8 days. Officials listed him as missing, presumed dead. A small plaque was placed at the trailhead months later. His truck was eventually towed and sold. For the next 7 years, the forest remained quiet. No new clues, no unexpected finds. Daniel became a story hikers told in hushed tones, a cautionary tale. Some believed he fell, others whispered about something stranger. But in time, most moved on. Everyone, that is, except Laura. It was nearly 7 years to the day when a young couple, Emma and Tyler, took a weekend trip up Mount Ashburn. They weren't experienced hikers, just adventurous. They followed a GPS trail posted on a hiking blog, one that led them off the usual paths, up toward a narrow ridge not shown on official maps. It was steep, rocky, and strangely quiet. Near the summit, as clouds began to gather, Tyler spotted something odd leaning against a flat boulder. At first, he thought it was trash, but when he stepped closer, he realized it was a backpack. Blue, clean, upright, as if someone had just set it down and walked away. Emma called out, but there was no answer. Tyler unzipped the bag. Inside were 2 protein bar wrappers, a small notebook, and a folded rain jacket. Everything looked surprisingly new. No signs of sun bleaching or moisture. That's when Emma saw the walking sticks, propped neatly nearby, not fallen or scattered, but placed deliberately. The couple grew uneasy. They checked the ID in the pack, and what they saw froze them in place. Daniel Whitaker. The name rang a bell. Tyler remembered reading about him in an old Reddit thread about strange disappearances. They didn't touch anything else. Instead, they marked the spot with a ribbon and hiked back down, faster than they'd come up. By the next morning, the local ranger station had launched an official investigation. Rangers made their way to the site using coordinates the couple provided. The pack was still there, untouched, exactly as described. Everything inside was dry, almost new, but no footprints surrounded it, no signs of shelter or remains. The water bottle was half full. One ranger noted that it didn't smell stale. They searched the area for hours. Nothing. No bones, no clothing scraps, no signs of anyone living or dying nearby. The backpack was taken in for analysis. The ID was verified. It was real. It belonged to Daniel Whitaker, the man who had vanished without a trace almost 7 years earlier. Word reached Laura later that night. When she answered the call and heard his name, she didn't speak. She simply closed her eyes and whispered, "I knew it." The backpack was sent to a forensic lab in Denver. Experts expected weather damage, mold, and wear. Instead, They found pristine fabric, zippers that moved smoothly, and packaging inside the food wrappers that hadn't faded. The protein bars were slightly stale but still edible. Based on the state of the gear, the lab's report was clear. This backpack had not been exposed to the elements for more than a few weeks. The Rangers returned to the ridge with Tyler and Emma, retracing their steps. When they arrived at the boulder, the backpack was gone. In its place was something far stranger. A round, dead patch of ground, about 10 feet across. Nothing burned, but the earth was brittle, dried out, as if life had been sucked right out of it. They searched for miles in every direction. No prints, no gear, no trash. The ridge had gone silent again. A week later, a drone operator reviewing old footage from a nearby flyover spotted something odd. One frame showed a human figure standing alone on a distant ledge, arms at his sides, staring directly up at the drone. It was just a blur, but the frame before and after showed nothing. He had appeared and vanished in a single second. Curious, the team flew another drone over the area. This time, a glint of light caught the camera's eye. Tucked beneath an overgrown tree hollow was a small device, a trail camera. They pulled it out and checked the SD card. Only one video was saved. No timestamp, no GPS metadata. The footage showed a man, thin, bearded, weathered, but not broken. He stood a few feet from the camera, silent for a moment, then smiled gently. "I know this seems strange, but I'm okay. Please don't come looking." Then he turned and walked into the forest. No backpack, no gear. Just a slow walk into shadow. The video cut off mid-step. The Rangers ran facial recognition. There was no doubt, it was Daniel Whitaker. No one could explain how he had recorded it. No one could explain where he had been. But the forest, it seemed, still knew something the rest of them didn't. Within days of the drone footage being leaked, the internet exploded. Forums lit up with every theory imaginable. Some believed Daniel had faked his death and lived off-grid. Others swore the forest around Mount Ashburn was known for strange energy fields, even time distortions. A few insisted it was government territory, black site labs or satellite arrays hidden deep underground. But none of it explained the clean gear, the disappearing backpack, or how Daniel hadn't aged more than a few years. Local news picked up the story. Reporters swarmed the town, asking about voices in the woods, flickering lights near the summit, stories hikers had kept to themselves for years. One old man, who worked a lonely fire watch tower a few miles out, claimed he once saw two figures standing in the trees, one tall and still, the other waving. He blinked, and they were gone. Back in her small house outside Boulder, Laura sat at her kitchen table watching the video on loop. She studied every frame, every blink, every breath. It was him, not a look-alike, not a hallucination. She noticed something most people didn't: his wedding ring. He hadn't worn it since Margaret passed, yet there it was on his hand, plain as day. She pulled out a dusty box from her closet. Daniel's old things. Letters. Hiking maps. A small leather-bound journal she had once skimmed through but never read closely. Near the back, on a page dated just days before his disappearance, were 7 short words. "If I find it, I'll stay there." Laura didn't sleep that night. Her thoughts moved in circles. What had he found? What had kept him away this long? In town, locals argued about whether to go looking again. Some feared the mountain wanted to be left alone. Others were convinced Daniel had crossed into something unnatural. Another dimension, maybe, or some hidden world just out of reach. And then something quiet happened. Hikers began leaving things at the summit. A water bottle, a scarf, a note under a stone, all addressed to Daniel. Not to beg him home, but to say they believed him. That maybe, just maybe, he'd found something the rest of the world wasn't meant to see. Not yet. 7 years after Daniel vanished, Laura returned to Mount Ashburn. She didn't call the news. She didn't bring a camera. She simply drove up, parked at the same lot where his truck once sat, and walked into the trees. She followed the original trail for hours, then veered toward the ridge where the backpack was found. The air grew colder, quieter. Every step felt like walking through memory. Near the summit, under a flat stone wedged into a natural alcove, she saw something. Folded carefully. Dry despite recent storms. A sealed envelope. On the front, in handwriting that made her knees go weak, was her name. Laura. She sat down right there in the dirt and opened it. Inside was a single page. The ink was fresh. The edges of the paper smooth. Later, lab results would confirm it. This letter had been written less than 2 weeks ago. But it was Daniel's handwriting. No doubt, no question. The same curves, the same neatness he always had when writing things that mattered. The note read, "Don't come looking for me. I'm not the same anymore. But I'm happy now. I found something here. Something most people don't believe exists. And I chose to stay." There were no answers about what it was. No map, no explanation. Just peace in the tone of his words. Not fear, not confusion. Just peace. Laura sat on the rock for hours, watching the clouds shift around the peaks. No one came. No wind picked up. But something in her settled. The fear that he had died cold and alone. That he had suffered or lost his mind. That fear lifted. He had found something. A place. A feeling. Maybe even someone. She left the letter where she found it, tucked safely back under the stone. It didn't belong to the world, not really. It belonged to that mountain. To him. And as she walked back down the trail, the forest seemed different. Not haunted, not empty, but alive. Like it had just said something back. Daniel Whitaker never returned to the world he left. But somehow, he had made sure the world knew he was still out there. And he was happy.